Yo guys, what is up? Mike's on our first Descendant video, and today we're going over my guide for the Secret Garden. Now, this is a weapon that I've been using for a while. It is incredibly powerful with its capability to buff up your ability damage on tech descendants such as Freyna, Viessa, Ajax. However, it is absolutely no slouch when it comes to damage. So today we're going to be talking about not only how to use it for ability builds, but also how to scale up its damage and make it into a weapon that kind of shreds bosses. Hope you guys enjoy the video. Let's get right into it. So the first thing to mention with the Secret Garden is its Gardener ability. Whenever you use a Dimension skill, recover custom resource with a set chance. And when using a tech skill, grant the unique ability Pest Control with a set chance. This Dimension custom resource is only useful on a few characters. This does work very well for Ajax and Kyle. Freyna and Viessa obviously don't have custom resources, so you can kind of ignore this top part. But the real reason to use this weapon is its Pest Control buff. The way that this works is every time you cast a tech skill, you have a 50% chance to proc a 10-second buff that is going to give you increased firearm attack for this weapon and increased skill power. And this is what you get on your first stack. Your subsequent stacks are going to get way more skill power and way more firearm attack. These stack up 3 times. And so you're going to want to be able to use Descendants that use their abilities quickly with low cooldown to scale up this damage as fast as possible, because you only have a 50% trigger rate. They only last 10 seconds. You want to be able to spam your tech skills with low cooldowns to stack up over 32% I guess 37% increased skill power, which is amazing. Real quick, I just wanted to show off a budget build. I'm recording this after I recorded the rest of the video and I was about to upload it, but I just wanted to show a budget build because these are really the core things you needed on the weapon, and you don't really need much else, honestly. Action and reaction, rifle and reinforcement to get your base damage up. 1 critical hit rate mod brings you to almost 70% crit chance, and then double crit damage mods and a fire rate mod will allow you to kill most of the things in the game with this weapon. Obviously, I'm about to show you if you want to invest into it further. But this weapon's real strength is its ability to buff your damage, and so you can kind of invest nothing into this weapon, but get it to rank 4 out of 4, and it'll just make your abilities on your Descendants deal more damage. But if you really want to push it and push its damage further, I'm about to go over some higher damage builds. Now, this is the build that I'm using on the Secret Garden 99% of the time that I am playing it. While it is really good at bossing, I just use other weapons for the most part for bossing. As you probably saw from the intro, this thing can absolutely put in some good boss damage, but I really prefer this thing for mobbing. One, because it's giving me those ability buffs, but also because it's just a very accurate, high damage weapon. This is actually one of my go-tos when I'm doing outposts or I'm doing fusion reactors, is just shooting the Secret Garden at outpost bosses or reactor bosses. It just kind of shreds. And one of the reasons it shreds is because they gave this thing the highest base crit rate out of any of the weapons that aren't sniper rifles. It's pretty ridiculous. It's sitting at 50% base critical hit rate. If we go to our setting 3, you can see that its starting critical hit rate is 50%. This is incredible, which allows you to scale crit damage really high on it on any character. Obviously, if you're using characters like Valby, Enzo, Haley, or Blair, you can get to 100% critical hit rate very easily. But as just any Descendant can equip this thing and hit really hard because it's going to scale really high crit rate. On this setup, we've got a ton of crit damage. We're almost at 4.7 crit multiplier. We've got 2.325 weak point. And on this setup, I didn't want to sacrifice any sort of accuracy or anything like that. And because we're using it for mobbing, we are going to be using Sweeping Squad. When we're defeating an enemy, you can stack up extra firearm attack damage. I didn't want to use status effects on this thing. I was oh, maybe if I'm using it on Freyna, I'd want to use Toxic on it. The fact of the matter is that this thing doesn't have a great status effect trigger rate. It's 5%. And most things you're going to shoot at with this thing are going to be dead before they'll have any impact of a status on them for mobbing. So I just didn't build it for statuses. I don't think you need to. But I didn't want to put on have aiming or anything that would sacrifice this weapon's accuracy or ability just to be used all around. So that is our main build that we're rocking for it. For bossing, the build is pretty simple. we are just swapping out simply sweeping squad for real life fighter. This weapon fires very quickly and very accurately. We can buff up real life fighter to deal a lot of damage to bosses. I was originally thinking, because this thing does have a large mag size, a starting mag size of 48, I was originally going to go mental focus with a mag size mod so that you could shoot it for a while. I ended up not really liking that route. It's definitely something that you could do, but in my opinion, I'd rather just go real life fighter and have some extra damage. It already has a big enough mag that you don't really need it. Now, I don't think you need to use mods on this thing like edging shot for the extra crit rate when you're losing 15% attack. Definitely something you could do. However, it already scales its crit up a ton, so I prefer not to lose that percentage increase. And I didn't want to use half aiming just because I like the accuracy of this thing, and it can get a little bit all over the place with too much inaccuracy. Also, one thing to note is sharp precision shot does not work on this weapon because even if you're using it in full auto mode, if you're holding down the trigger, sharp precision shot will reset. So sharp precision shot would technically be the best in slot mod if it worked for this thing. However, it does not, unfortunately. So not using it here. For the substats on the weapon, the biggest one to get, in my opinion, is critical hit damage, which I actually don't have. Ignore that. After that, it kind of depends. If you want to use it for Colossuses and boss fights, I would definitely go for that. It's an amazing stat. And then you could go like firearm and crit chance or firearm and weak point. If you don't plan on using it on Colossuses, you can go for firearm crit rate, weak point, and crit damage. Are all really great things. It's not the worst thing in the world to get like a mag size roll on this thing, just because it does have a really high starting mag size. But if you're going for all damage, those are the stats I'd go for. For actually acquiring the Secret Garden, the first part for the Polymer Synctium, I'd recommend farming 082. The reason for this is because you've got a 32% chance of getting the part you want, but it also drops Executor blueprints, which is fantastic because the Executor is just recently buffed, so you can go farm for both weapons. And this outpost is very easy to do in Echo Swamp. I've farmed this outpost a bunch. So that is for the first part. For the synthetic fiber, I'd recommend farming the Amorphous 120. This is also from an outpost that is in converter facility of Fortress. Also another really easy outpost to farm. Next up for the nanotube, which is the hardest one to farm, just because it's a 10% drop, I'd recommend doing the Agna Desert, the 088. This has a outpost boss that you can kill that doesn't have an immune phase, while the other ones can have immune phases. So this is the one that I would farm for personally, Agna Desert, Vermilion Waste. And lastly, for the blueprint, if you're confident in your ability to kill Pyromaniac quickly, I would go for 085 from Seed Vault. They recently buffed this dungeon so that it's faster to farm than before. It was already kind of a speedy dungeon. It's even faster now. If you are not confident in your ability to kill Pyromaniac, I would just go for the 054 from Kingston. But ideally, you're doing Seed Vault for Pyromaniac. That's going to give you guaranteed relics. You'll probably already be sick of doing so many outposts from the other farms. Guys, that's going to do it for the video on the Secret Garden. Just a quick one. Honestly, the gun is fairly simple, but it is a really useful tool on the characters that make good use out of it. With Ultimate Freyna coming out, obviously, we don't know what her new Transcendent modules are. They could change her abilities from tech, but if things stay the way that they are, you're absolutely going to want a Secret Garden for her because it is, in my opinion, by far and away her best weapon. And pairing that with a Secret Garden reactor, you're going to be all set for when she launches. Hopefully, we'll see what happens when she actually does come out. But that is kind of my prepping that I've done for her launch.